The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment monitoring Roland's fragile state. Destiny sat by her father's bedside, tears streaming down her face as she clutched his hand tightly. Her world had been turned upside down once more, this time by an act of violence so cruel it left her heart shattered. Roland lay unconscious, bruised and battered, a victim of Eric's father's relentless ambition. When Eric arrived at the hospital later that evening, his breath caught in his throat at the sight of Roland lying there, barely clinging to life. This was the man who had welcomed him into his home without judgment, who had cared for him despite knowing nothing of his true identity. Seeing Roland like this broke something inside Eric, a deep anger surged through him, fueled by guilt and sorrow. Destiny looked up when Eric entered the room, her eyes red from crying. She managed a weak smile, though her voice trembled. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Eric nodded, his jaw clenched. "I made sure my father won't hurt your family again," he said firmly. "I promise you're safe now." But as he sat beside her, taking her other hand in his, Eric knew the battle was far from over. The damage done couldn't be undone with mere words or promises. Still, they held each other close, finding solace in their shared love amidst the chaos. Back at the mansion, Eric seethed with fury. That night, after leaving the hospital, he stormed into his study, opening the drawer where he kept a gun. For the first time in his life, Eric felt ready to stand up to his father, no matter the cost. He marched downstairs to his father's study, where the older man sat brooding over his election loss, nursing a glass of whiskey. The door burst open, startling his father. Eric stood in the doorway, his face darkened with anger, the gun steady in his hand. His father froze, shock etched onto his features. He had never seen Eric like this, his usually obedient, respectful son now threatening him with deadly seriousness. "If Roland dies," Eric growled, his voice cold and steady, "then you will die too." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. His father sat frozen, unable to speak. The weight of Eric's words hit him hard. This wasn't a joke, Eric wasn't bluffing. There was a fierce determination in his son's eyes, a rage his father had never imagined could exist within him. "You've done enough," Eric continued, his voice cutting through the tension. "Because of you, an innocent man is lying in the hospital fighting for his life, all because of your greed, your need for control. If he doesn't make it, I swear you'll pay for it with your own life." Tears welled up in his father's eyes, something Eric had never witnessed before. Slowly, the old man lowered his head, shame washing over him. For the first time, Eric's father realized how far he had pushed, how much damage his ambition had caused. He had always believed he was doing what was best for his family, but now, looking at the anger and pain on his son's face, he saw the truth: he had broken something irreparably. "I'm sorry," his father whispered, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I just wanted you to have the life I thought was best for you." But Eric wasn't moved. Years of disappointment clouded his ability to trust his father's sudden change of heart. Still, he listened as his father pleaded, raising his hands in surrender. "I'll fix this. I promise. I'll call off my men, and I'll ensure Roland gets the best care possible. I'll make things right." Eric's face remained hard, but he could see the sincerity, or perhaps the desperation, in his father's expression. Lowering the gun slightly, he spoke, his voice still cold. "Fixing this won't bring back the trust you've broken. You can't undo what you've done." His father nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of his mistakes. "I know," he whispered. "But I'll try. I'll do whatever it takes." Reluctantly, Eric placed the gun down on the table between them. His father let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through him. But Eric wasn't done yet. If anything happens to Destiny's father, he warned, his tone unwavering, I'll never forgive you. And I will never come back. With that, Eric turned and walked out of the room, leaving his father sitting there in silence, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. For the first time, the weight of his actions truly hit him. He had nearly lost his only son, and worse, he had caused harm to a family that had shown kindness to Eric when no one else would. As Eric stepped outside into the cool night air, a storm of emotions raged within him. Part of him wanted to believe his father's promises, but years of betrayal made trust impossible. One thing was certain, he had to protect Destiny and her father. They were the only people who had ever treated him like a real person, not a trophy or a symbol of wealth. Determined, Eric returned to the hospital, seeking comfort in Destiny's presence. Together, they faced the uncertainty ahead, drawing strength from their love and resolve. Though challenges loomed large, they knew they had each other, and somehow, that gave them hope.